Kia ora koutou katoa. Talofa lava, malo lele ki orana. Whakalofa lahi atu. Kona Māori, Nisa Bulavanaka, Ni Hao Namaste. No mai, haere mai. Ko Greg Morgan, tōku ingoa. My name is Greg Morgan and I work for the Council. I'm really pleased to be your host this evening for this discussion focusing on the 10-year budget and the self. Welcome and thank you for joining the webinar. We're going to be joined by some panellists, and they are councillors and local board chairs, but they have a number of meetings going on, and so some people are going to be arriving as we've got underway. So I will be adding names in once we know people are here. I do know that we have Councillor Angela Dalton with us. Councillor Dalton is from the Manarewa Papakura ward, and I'm just going to have a look and see whether we have anyone else with us. We're just getting people named, so I'll come back and just update you on our panellists. And we have some council colleagues of mine with us as well. Pramod Nair, Head of Group Financial Planning, Andrew Duncan, Manager Financial Policy, Alec Tang, Chief Sustainability Officer, Anna Jennings, Lead Planner. And so what we're going to do this evening is show a little video on behalf of the Mayor just to set the scene around the 10-year budget, the recovery budget it's being called. And then we will have a presentation from Pramod and Andrew. They will give us a backgrounder on what is being consulted on this year in the 10-year recovery budget consultation. And then there'll be a space for you to put in some questions so that they can be answered by the panelists and lead to discussion. And the way that you put in questions is that you type them into the Q&A window, which is at the bottom of your screen. So if you have a look down there, you'll see a little kind of like little speech bubbles, and it will say Q&A. And if you can just type your question in there, you'll be able to see only your question. We'll pick them up and they'll go to one of the panelists to answer for you. So I will come back and keep updating us as other people are joining, and thank you for being here or for watching this afterwards. Tonight's session will be up on the website, and it will be up there with questions and answers, and anything that we don't answer this evening will go to a subject matter expert, and the answer will be on the website. So right now, just to get us underway, let's start with the video on behalf of the Mayor.
This year is the year of recovery from COVID-19. We stopped the spread of the disease, but the economic impact and hit on council revenue was real. This 10-year budget is about how we get the best outcomes for Auckland. It will provide for our city's future while keeping our rates increases low compared to other growth cities in New Zealand. We'll help Auckland's economy recover, support our communities, build water and housing infrastructure, and improve our transport network. We'll continue to make progress on cleaning up our beaches and streams and on our long-term response to climate change. Auckland Council is forecast to take a $1 billion revenue hit because of COVID-19. This budget aims to find a balance between investing in our city and not overburdening our residents. We need your feedback on these issues and how we pay for them. To have your say, go to haveyoursay.nz/recovery budget and tell us what you think of our plans for the future of Auckland.
Thank you very much. So that is a video just to get us underway in this discussion on the 10-year recovery budget, and with a special focus on whānau and south of Tamaki Makaurau. And we've now got a presentation, a fairly brief presentation, but it just shows us what's being consulted on at the moment and all of the different topics that you can put in some feedback about as you are thinking about how the council shapes up its budget for the next 10 years. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Pramod, and I think Andrew's going to assist as well. If you just bring us the background presentation, please.
Thank you, Greg. So hopefully everyone can see that presentation now. Yep. Okay, so as Greg mentioned, so my name is Pramod Nair. I'm from the Council's finance team, and Andrew Duncan, my colleague, will also be helping me walk through the presentation to talk through the key regional issues we want to hear from Aucklanders on. So councils across the country prepare 10-year budgets, often called long-term plans, every 3 years. They look at the activities the council will focus on and how they will fund them. I don't think it comes as any surprise to anyone at the moment that this is not a business as usual 10-year budgeting process. Hearing from Aucklanders on our plans is a key part of the process, and we want to hear from as many as we can. Your input will support the elected members as they make final decisions in June. The council, like so many others, is feeling significant impacts of COVID-19. We are projecting to lose $1 billion in revenue over 4 years. Meanwhile, we still need to plan for the projected growth of the city and to look after the infrastructure that delivers the services we all value. We also need to face up to the challenges of climate change, both in terms of emissions reduction and adaptation to climate change, to changing climate. This is why we are referring to this as our recovery budget. The real challenge behind this budget is one of balance. On one hand, an increased need for council investment, but on the other, less availability of funds to make this investment. I have already mentioned Auckland's growth, infrastructure needs, and climate change, but we also need to continue the work we have started on our transport network. We need to ensure our activities match the changing needs of our people, and we need to play our part in supporting recovery from COVID-19. At the same time, we have less capacity to invest. We have talked about the reductions in expected revenue due to COVID, but we also need to be careful how much we borrow and ensure we have headroom for any future shocks. Large sections of our funding is already committed through major projects such as CRL and the Central Interceptor. We also need to consider the overall impact of funding options we propose on the communities we serve. This draft plan looks at 5 key issues. Our first key issue is around our proposed investment package. This is essentially our response to the balancing challenge in the last slide. We are proposing to invest $31 billion over the next 10 years. This includes $900 million of more investment over the next 3 years. Our proposal enables this investment to average $2.9 billion for the next 3 years. This totals $900 more than we would have otherwise been able to afford. To achieve this, we will continue our focus on savings and value and lock in at least $90 million of permanent ongoing annual savings. As we did in the emergency budget, we will also look to release $70 million a year over the next 3 years by selling or leasing surplus properties. Increase our borrowing to temporarily higher debt to revenue ratio of up to 290% for the first 3 years, gradually returning to 270% thereafter, and stick with a rates increase of 3.5% per annum over the long term, but have a higher increase of 5% for the next year. With the additional $900 million investment proposed over the next 3 years, we will be able to invest an extra $550 million on Auckland's transport network, $54 million on stormwater infrastructure, and $65 million on parks and community funding for more renewals and also additional parks and sports fields in areas of greatest need. Other areas that will benefit from the additional investment include the earlier restoration of the art gallery, heritage building, as well as accelerating work on landfills to address health and safety concerns. Our second proposal is about climate change action. It's not down to the council to tackle climate change on their own, but we want to lead from the front. We're already doing a lot of work to tackle emissions, including phasing out gas boilers in council aquatic centres, introducing more electric vehicles into the council's fleet, providing walking, cycling, and public transport options. This proposed package includes no new diesel buses, all electric or hydrogen from this year, big planting projects including both street trees and more native forest, increasing our zero waste resource recovery network, improving efficiency of our facilities, and partnering with others in supporting our communities to reduce emissions as well as energy costs. Our third key issue is about responding to housing and growth. Over the next 10 years, we expect 260,000 more people to call Auckland home. The Auckland Unitary Plan has enabled the development of more than 1 million homes in existing residential areas and 137,000 in planned future urban areas. We need to provide infrastructure and services to support this development, but cannot afford to do it all now. We propose to focus our resources on a few key locations, areas agreed with the government as part of the Auckland Housing Program. This includes Mount Roskill, Tamaki and Mangere, where there is other significant government investment plans such as Drury and areas of the Northwest, and where investment in big projects like CRL is being made. Key issue 4 is about our investment in our community. Councils have traditionally provided community services using a large network of buildings. Over time, the needs of our communities have and are changing. We need to become more adaptable in how we provide community services to keep up with the changing needs. With much of our investment locked into aging community buildings and facilities, we are spending more on renewals and maintenance. This detracts from the amount we can spend delivering the services Aucklanders need. This recovery budget is proposing a move away from an asset-dominated approach to community services. We propose to consider how to better use partnerships, grants, digital and non-asset-based approaches more tailored to community needs. Over time, implementation of this new approach would see us closing some community assets that aren't fit for our purpose and reinvest in services and facilities that better meet the needs of our communities. The previous 10-year budget accelerated actions to improve our water quality and natural environment. This was funded by the Water Quality Targeted Rate and the Natural Environment Targeted Rate. We are proposing to extend and increase this investment so that we can continue to invest in different parts of our city. This budget proposes to extend the Water Quality Targeted Rate past its end date of 2028 to 2031 so that we can continue to invest in different parts of the city, and it also proposes to increase this rate in line with the projected average increase in general rates. This will be an increase for the average value residential property of $3.30 a year. This will enable us to extend our water quality work to do more in the Manukau Harbour, the Tamaki Estuary and beaches stretching from Parnell to Glendowie, and for construction to start in 2022-23 rather than 6 years later. It will also fund additional litter traps across the entire region to remove contaminants and improve freshwater and coastal water. We are also proposing to extend the Natural Environment Targeted Rate from 2028 to 2031. This allows us to maintain the work we are currently doing on things like addressing kauri dieback and predator and weed control. Our other priorities include focusing on Māori outcomes. Council is committed to treaty-based partnerships with Māori. We enable delivery against 10 Māori outcomes strategic priorities through our Māori outcomes portfolio. The portfolio includes our day-to-day activities, supplemented by the targeted use of the Māori Outcomes Fund, which is $150 million of investment over the next 10 years. Examples of where this investment goes includes the Marae Infrastructure Program, which helps Marae to be healthy and sustainable cultural hubs. Ngā Kia Te Akaranga is our cultural capability program, and Te Kete Rukuruku is returning names to parks and places across Tamaki Makaurau and helps ensure the Māori language is seen, heard, spoken and learned in everyday life. This recovery budget also reinstates the contestable funds which were reduced as part of the emergency budget for this year. We are also proposing to embed a $500,000 annual operational fund to work with other organisations to support homeless people. We will also continue work with the Southern Initiative, and the Western Initiative will help disadvantaged sections of our community with skills training and employment pathways. I'm going to hand over to Andrew Duncan now.
Good evening. The proposals that Pramod's just taken you through are funded by a 5% increase in our general rates. Now, this one-off increase for the 21-22 year, for the average value residential property in Auckland, it's an average value of $1.08 million. This will mean an increase of $150 per year or $3 per week. Now, this includes the one-off 5% general rates increase, but also the $3.30 for the additional water quality targeted rate increase of 5%, and a small increase in the base waste management rate. Now, the average value business property is $2.84 million, and we charge slightly higher rates to businesses. They'll pay an additional $583 a year. You can see exactly how your rates will be affected by going to the website on this screen, akhaveyoursay.nz/rates guide, and it'll show you how each of the changes affect the rates on your property and what your overall rates will be. We encourage you to have a look there, and also obviously at that website you'll also see how to provide us with your feedback online on the annual plan proposals. Now, in addition to the rates increases we've just talked about, we're also proposing some other changes to our rating policy. So we have a value-based general rate, which we've talked about increasing previously. And this is calculated by multiplying the cents in the dollar of the rate times the capital value of the property. Now, for urban residential properties, we charge the standard urban residential rate, but we charge a slightly lower rate for rural residential properties, and obviously we also have a lower differential for rural business properties. Now, these properties pay 90% of the cents in the dollar of the value-based rate that urban properties did. And we set this urban rating area 10 years ago. The city's expanded since then. We've got a lot of growth at the edges of the city, and some of our developing areas and towns near the current urban rating area have similar levels of access to service as nearby properties within the urban rating area, yet are paying lower rates. So what we're proposing to do is to expand the urban rating area to include these properties and to include properties where urban development's permitted, except in Warkworth, where the service levels are still well below those available to urban areas. Now, some of the areas that are affected, Pine Valley, Whenuapai, Herald Island, parts of Dairy Flat, Hobsonville, Pukekohe, and a number of other areas. Now, we're also considering including Huapai, Kumeu, and Riverhead. They've got higher levels of access to council services than rural areas, but not quite as much yet as urban areas. In addition, we're looking to change how we rate some farm and lifestyle properties. At the moment, they pay 80% of the urban residential rate wherever they are located in Auckland. There are a small number of these farms and lifestyle use properties in the current urban rating area that are now zoned for residential or business development, and they've got access to the same level of services as their urban rated neighbours. So we're proposing that for these properties, we charge them the urban residential rate, the same as their neighbours. Got a few other changes to rating policies. We have an accommodation provider targeted rate that's paid only by the owners of properties like hotels, motels, and Airbnb properties. Now, we use the money we've raised from this to help us pay for visitor attraction and major events spending by Auckland Unlimited. But last year, when the country went into lockdown and we closed our borders, we decided to reduce our spending on destination marketing, visitor attraction, and major events because we weren't going to be getting tourists. And we also suspended that rate for 1 year. The council now needs to decide when it will reinstate the rate and at the same time reinstate that spending. We've put out 3 options for consultation. We reinstate it as originally intended on the 1st of April 2021, or we wait till the 1st of January 2022, or we extend the suspension for the entirety of the next rating year and don't start it again until the 1st of July 2022. Now, the council's wanting to get people's feedback on this. They've put 3 options on the table to give them choice, plenty of choice to consider the best time to do this after taking into account what's happening with our borders and what's likely to happen with international travel in the future and when we are likely to return to something like normal. In addition, we're proposing to introduce a rate on Vector that will enable us to improve our management of our trees that are near their power lines. So enhanced management of these trees will enable us to improve public safety around power lines and also to improve the security of electricity supply, reduce power outages. This rate would only be paid by Vector. Now, we also have a targeted rate that only applies to businesses and residential properties in the city centre. And we use this to allow us to make additional investments in making the city centre a great place to live, work and visit and to do business. The rate at the moment expires in 2024-25. We're proposing to extend it for the life of this long-term plan to 2030-31, giving us an additional 157.7 million to invest over that period. We're also proposing to introduce a bus service between Palermo and Albany to enable the residents of Palermo to connect to our wider public transport network. And this rate that's proposed, if the bus service goes ahead, there'd be a targeted rate to fund that on the properties in the Palermo area. So we're keen to get your views, and there's a number of ways you can do this. Greg, did you want to run over this?
Sorry, Andrew, I was just catching up on the list of people who are here. So, yep, I will cover this off. Maybe we'll just pause for a second. And is this the last slide, or is there other slides after this?
There's a couple of slides on the consultation. I can go over them, but I thought...
Okay, why don't you go over that and then finish the presentation, and I'll reiterate it. Yeah, thank you, Greg. That's right, no problem at all. Thank you.
So if you go to our website, you can find out how to attend a webinar like this, and there are several others planned, some specifically run by the local boards in your area. You can give us feedback through that channel. You can go online at the AK Have Your Say I referred to earlier and give us feedback, read our consultation document. There's a feedback form attached to the back of that, which you can access in hard copy at our libraries and service centres. We also have translated summaries in a number of languages: Maori, Korean, Chinese, Samoan, Tongan, sign language videos available, and there are accessible versions of our information. And there are also social media channels to provide us with feedback. So you can use Facebook and comment on the recovery budget. Instagram and Twitter are also other channels. Now, we're looking forward to hearing your views, knowing what you want the city to do, where you want it to invest, how you feel about the rates increases. Important information to help the councillors make their decisions on what we're going to do over the next 10 years. And we look forward to hearing from you and looking forward to your questions this evening. Don't forget our website, AK Have Your Say Recovery Budget. We definitely want to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Andrew, thanks very much indeed, and thank you, Pramod, as well. Remember that you can put your questions in by typing into the Q&A window, which is at the bottom of the screen, and then we'll pick the questions up and pass them to our panelists for discussion. So let's just update you on the panel members who are here. We have Councillor Alf Filipina with us. So really good to see you, Councillor, from the Manukau ward. And we know that we have Councillor Angela Dalton with us, so welcome again. And we also have a local board member with us from Otara Papatoetoe local board, Apura Rees Altangavaya. So thank you for being with us this evening as well. Very good. And the questions have started to come in, so let's take a question. And I think what we might do is go to Councillor Alf Filipina first, just to get us underway. And given your committee work as well, Councillor, this is a good question for you. What are the plans for investment in our community? So thinking around libraries, parks, housing and transport.
Thanks, Greg, and obviously welcome to all that's online. In regards, I'm going to deal with parks first, which comes through the committee now. If the 5% is approved, and the consultation is so important, that $65 million that was mentioned, we've got 23.3 million of that will go to local parks and sports field in regards to a growth program. So that's how much will be invested in the long-term plan in regards to the 5%. The other $41.7 million, that will end up going through to our local programs or projects, so to our local boards, and that's going to be around local renewals, seismic, and a local initiative, plus also specific long-term plan projects. So that's where the monies in regards to parks will end up going to. In regards to our libraries, when you build the libraries, the regional funds will end up putting through that. But then once it's built, the local boards, they are so key in regards to our libraries. We would look at not in the investing apart from building it, but that's really all I can say around what the question is about. And I'll just wait my turn and see what happens around the Manukau Harbour Forum, the Manukau Harbour question. But in regards to that, and I think from a transport perspective, we've also, Pramod mentioned the 550 million already. So, just to reiterate that, and there was a release last week from the Auckland Transport Alignment Project that His Worship the Mayor and some of our local board and councillors attended at the Manukau interchange, along with the Honourable Transport Minister, Michael Woods. So, that's there as a communication and consultation with central government around those key transport projects. So please go to our Auckland, our magazine, to have a look at those details. But that's in regards to at least three of that particular question. Greg, kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Christine Fletcher, you've joined us as well. So welcome to you. Tēnā koe. Very good. Now, transport has come up. Let's talk a little about the Auckland Transport Alignment Plan. I think I've got that title correct. And we have a subject matter expert online, Anna Jennings, who's a colleague of mine. So Anna, would you just like to talk about ATAP?
Kia ora. I'll just follow on from what Councillor Filipina has just outlined, that the plan was launched on Friday. So you can go online to our Auckland, and if we can possibly share that link, you'll see a map of the key projects that are anticipated to be funded in the next 10 years. And you can clearly see what some of the projects in the south are. And some of these align with the areas that Kāinga Ora are developing in, particularly around Mangere, and improvements around those areas. There are also, as part of that package, is a new Community Connect initiative, which is half price fares for the people that are eligible for those as well, to encourage greater use of public transport. So that's another key part of the transport. I guess in terms of housing development, again, we're working closely with Kāinga Ora in areas like Mangere, where there's housing development. We've already enabled a huge amount of housing development through the Auckland Unitary Plan. And in terms of what's in our consultation document for the long-term plan, it's really about focusing our spend in some of the key areas that align with where central government investment is already occurring too.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. I just want to go back to a couple of aspects in the presentation that Pramod and Andrew brought us. Andrew, just thinking about the rates, if someone is struggling to pay their rates, what advice could you give them?
Hi, look, if someone is struggling with their rates, we would encourage them to get in touch with the council. Our staff will talk through your issues with you and look in the first instance at what sort of payment arrangements we can put in place. But they can also help you apply for the government's rates rebate scheme we administer. Now, this is means tested, but it offers a rebate of up to $655 that comes off your rates. And in addition, we offer a rates postponement scheme. Now, this is not means tested, so any residential ratepayer can apply for it. As long as you've got more than 20% equity in your property, you can continue to postpone your rates. So if you're having any issues, please ring us up and get in touch, and our team will do their best to help you out through one of those vehicles.
Thank you, Andrew. And just to be clear, so that might be your personal circumstances, in which case you can contact the council, but everybody should be having a view to put in on the consultation about what's intended with rates over the coming years, right? So whatever our circumstances, we can all have an opinion about how the rates should fall and look at the options in the consultation documents. Yeah, very good. Thank you very much for answering that question. Councillor Dalton, I wonder whether I could come to you and just ask you, what do you think are priorities that we should be thinking about as we are putting in our feedback on the recovery budget? And in particular, I suppose, thinking of the area you represent and families around those suburbs, what do you think people might want to be thinking about?
One of the questions that we're asking our community is, are our community facilities fit for purpose? And it's a conversation that we'll continue to have, but as our demographics change, our funding changes, then we need to look at different ways of doing things. The consultation document doesn't exactly set out what that is, and that is because we would like people to tell us. Councillor Filipaina and I were just on a hui with Matawaka, who are saying, marae have always been good, strong community facilities. Is there an option there for us to be able to invest in the operational costs of our marae to reach community? There's one idea, that there will be other ideas. So are our facilities as they are now, our local rec centres, which perhaps aren't as fit for purpose as they used to be, are they the way ahead? We also have a lot of community groups. I'm sure the other people on the hui will have this as well. We've got local groups who want to activate them, the facilities themselves. So the model moves from having a council employees in a facility to more community group, local group led. And the spin-off is that there is broader engagement across our Pacifica and Māori community into the facilities, and we have local employment. So there's a lot to think about, but we need to have a look at how we do things differently. And that is one of the questions in the community investment part of the consultation.
Very good, thank you, Councillor. Apulu Rees, I wonder whether I can come to you for a view from somebody who's a member of a local board. What do you think are priorities that the community members should be giving thought to as they're putting in feedback?
Thank you for the question. For our local board, one of our top priorities is resilience in terms of COVID-19 response. And so it's forced us all to adapt to new ways of living and working, and we're committed to supporting our community to continue to deliver programs, projects, and initiatives in new and innovative ways. And a couple of the councillors and I were on another online meeting with Mātāwaka, and they expressed a willingness to try and engage with how do we work with local marae to continue that resilience, because as we know, COVID, we're only just getting the vaccine, but if there's going to be more lockdowns, that's still going to impact us. But it goes beyond just the food boxes. It's about looking forward to to how can we get our people back into getting money back into the houses, into their homes. And so as local boards, that's our advocacy items, is to advocate to Auckland Transport, any large capital works that are happening in our local board area, that we would like social procurement to be an essential part of that, to get our locals jobs in our local areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether Andrew or Pramod, you would like to comment about the investment in infrastructure and some of those social outcomes that Apula Rees has just been talking about. No? Okay.
Well, I can perhaps.
Thank you, Andrew. Oh, thanks.
I can perhaps answer an earlier question about the Manukau Harbour.
Oh, okay. Yep. Thank you.
So as you'll see in our consultation document, the water quality targeted rate, by extending that rate and increasing it by the small amount, $3.30 a year next year, we can improve water quality everywhere in the city. But one of the particular areas of focus is the Manukau Harbour. Now, our roads and have a big impact. Roads and urban development are key contributors to water quality issues in the Manukau Harbour. Now, the additional funding that the water quality targeted rate will make available will allow us to integrate work on water quality and stormwater management with a number of major transportation projects that are taking place over the next decade. And that'll provide some benefits to the quality or control the flow of contaminants into the Manukau Harbour. So there's some benefits definitely for the Manukau from that investment.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Councillor Fletcher, would you like to just say a couple of words on the priorities that you see that people should be giving thought to as they're considering the recovery budget?
Thank you, Greg. I'd be delighted to. I've enjoyed joining as many of these webinars as I possibly can, because I think we are at a really critical point. This issue that you have covered earlier in the webinar on what do we prioritise, is it growth or is it renewals, is particularly felt in South Auckland. I grew up on the shores of the Manukau Harbour in Papakura and still spend a lot of time in the south, and I can see every time I drive out just the enormous growth that is taking place in Hengaia and right through to Pukekohe and so forth. And we know that in terms of equity, we have to actually fund that growth appropriately. We have to be able to, across the region, offer similar quality of services to the population, but that comes at a cost. And while many people are marketing this as a COVID recovery budget, for me, this budget is around, as much as anything, dealing with renewals that are long, long overdue. If people are serious about sustainability, you actually have to ensure that you are dealing with renewals, which is something that the council hasn't grappled with early enough on. And so we're in catch-up mode now on that. I'm terribly excited as we look forward that we can do better. We can do better in terms of partnerships. I still have the privilege of sitting on the Cracker Sports Trust out south. And I know the work that we're doing out there in terms of partnerships, that it might be with Foundation North, it might be with the council, it might be with the community, but that's a facility that is for the whole of the south. It's not just about one local board area. And that's the kind of attitude that we need to look at. On Saturday, we had the Three Kings United new club rooms opened at Keith Hay Park, and they've consolidated with Auckland. And, you know, wherever I look, there are opportunities that we can actually possibly spend less but do more. But we have to be a lot more savvy than we've been in the past. There's still a lot of work to do in that space, and I will look to the leadership that Alf and others will show on his committee, because that is a really huge area. Sorry, I've got a very naughty dog who's here with me. But we've got a lot of challenges that are still ahead of us. We don't know where the OPEX is going to come from on the CRL yet. That's a negotiation we still have to do with central government. Should we proceed with light rail? The same thing again. You know, this isn't just like a one-off budget, we'll get it right and then we'll be on the home straight. There are still many, many challenges, even if this budget is passed, for Auckland Council. So we need people to speak up on what they see are the priorities and what we could potentially include or exclude into the future. I don't feel comfortable about the targeted accommodation rate. I feel very strongly about the water quality rate and the targeted environmental rate. I think they've been very successful, especially if you're interested in conservation as I am. But, you know, out south, how do people feel about the targeted accommodation rate? We need to build tourism. Should there be areas that are excluded if we are to kickstart it again? Should there be exceptions across the region, or should it be something that every one of those accommodation businesses contribute to? You don't have to comment on every aspect of the budget. You can talk about as much or as little as you want to, but we need to hear from you. So I'm a passionate advocate on getting people involved. I think debate is healthy. I don't necessarily agree with, you know, it's not an all or nothing budget, this one. It's not completely a smorgasbord, but people can come in and take a little bite and work out whether it suits them or it doesn't suit them. But ultimately, we have to deal with the vexed issue of renewals. We have to deal with equity across the region. Otherwise, we're shortchanging the authors of amalgamation.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Alf Filipaina, may I come to you, please? So here's a question about housing growth in Mangere and Otahuhu. Are there additional capacity requirements for parks and green space because of that housing growth?
Yes, there is, and one of the key things, especially with the Parks, Arts, Community and Events Committee, is that decisions that are made with council and kāinga order around that, we end up doing land swaps. So then we can enhance, for example, at Moyle Park. We did a land swap in Moyle Park because we're speaking about Mangere or Otahuhu. There was a land swap there, so then the access to Moyle Park from the kāinga order development was made better. So yes, we are in regards to that. So no issue about that. And that's why we're working together with kāinga order in regards to anything like that.
Talofa, thank you, sir. Radio, Councillor Dalton, here's a question which I'm going to fire at you. Why increase the rates instead of cutting some costs? And wondering what the council is cutting. So we'll get a question from you, and then we might go to one of my colleagues as well and get a question from another perspective.
Oh, I hope they're the same answers.
They might be the same answers.
But do you mind if I just finish off from what Councillor Filipaina was saying
Please
in
do.
terms of partnerships? So the Manurewa local board has partnered with Fletcher's, who are building private development, but we're working together on putting an access bridge in, and we're working together on improving safety at the Te Mahi train station. So the opportunities for local boards to have the partnerships with Kāinga Ora, with other people in the areas, is one way that we can get improvements, sharing the cost, and sometimes council not even having to wear the cost. So just agreeing what Councillor Filipaina and Councillor Fletcher were saying about partnerships.
Great examples, thank you.
In terms of savings, and the finance team can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Chair of Finance said that over the 10 years, Council has saved $1 billion. But for this particular, for the emergency budget, we made a commitment to save $120 million. And then going into this, the first 3 years of the new budget, we will be saving $90 million. That comes in a variety of ways. It comes about doing our business a bit more efficiently. We're seeing out in the local board area that they are creating efficiencies in the way that the officers are working out there, supporting the teams. So reductions in staff is one way. Another way is, instead of outsourcing to contractors, is insourcing. So getting the skill that we need within our own organisation. Digital improvements. Our regulatory team have moved more to a digital platform, ensuring that we're getting the right procurement outcomes. So being really tight on our procurement that we're putting out there into the into everyone that's tendering for our contracts. So there's lots of different things, even down to we don't print in colour anymore. We're saving paper, we're not printing. So there's lots of little things, and then there's big things, and they add up to a lot of money, because $90 million in a year for an organisation that's been going for 10 years and saving as it goes is a lot of money. So I think the point that the Mayor continues to make, that rates only make up, is it 49% of our income? And the rest comes from the areas that have not been delivering us a return on our income because of COVID. So it will bounce back as we get more settled into returning back to the workforce. There'll be some costs that won't come back. We have a workforce that is working more from home. So that automatically reduces some of the cost to council within our facilities. So there are some things around how we make the savings, but the answer is yes, we should be making savings. Unfortunately, at this time, it also means a rate increase to be able to keep other people employed as we do our capital projects, to keep the city moving, and to repair our community facilities, our stormwater pipes, water pipes, and do some, just look after our assets so we don't end up like poor old Wellington at the moment, who's got pipes bursting all over the place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks very much indeed. And Pramod, is there anything you'd like to add to what the Councillor has said?
Yeah, I suppose the only thing, Greg, is, and just to reiterate what Councillor Dalton has said, savings and value for money has been a focus for Auckland Council since amalgamation. And the council has covered off the large amounts of savings through the various initiatives we've implemented. Now, the reason, the question about why not more savings, as Councillor has mentioned, that $90 million per annum is a large amount of savings to identify. Making further savings would start to also impact community services, and that's not something that we want to do. Then the people that actually need those services the most don't have access to them. That's why 90 million is hard to find, but finding more will start to impact our services, and that's why there's not more. That's the main thing.
Thank you very much, Pramod. I appreciate that. Now let's just see, if you have any questions, please remember to keep typing them into the Q&A window just at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll pick them up and send them to our panelists. And we don't seem to have any questions at the moment. So if anyone wishes to put a question in, it is sure to be picked up at the moment. Could we just check on the language, just so that we kind of know? Councillor Dalton referred to the emergency budget last year, and this is being called the recovery budget. Andrew, why is that language being chosen for this a 10-year budget plan? Oh, perhaps didn't hear me. Pramod, would you be able to just explain why the word recovery is being used?
Sure, Greg. So as you mentioned, this year was all about the emergency budget, and that was in response to the huge impact that COVID had on our non-rates revenue. Of taking a hit of 450 million meant that we had to respond in an emergency environment. The recovery budget is all about responding and helping with the recovery of the Auckland region and the economy. So even though, and that's kind of the driver behind the proposal around our rates increase and the higher borrowing over the next 3 years, is to ensure that we can kind of continue maintaining the assets that we've got, but also to support the growth and also the businesses and the economy of the Auckland region. So that's where the recovery side of the things comes from. Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add to that, but that is the reason why it's called the recovery budget, to recover from the impacts of COVID that we've faced in the current year.
Sure, thank you very much.
I think recovery in terms of examples, and Pramod really did speak to it, but it's ensuring that there are jobs. So we have a responsibility not to only, we're one of the biggest employers, but we also have some of the biggest projects. If you look at the City Rail Link and the Central Interceptor, they are providing jobs. And the Western Initiative and the Southern Initiative are doing a good job of making sure that our Māori and Pacifica are getting jobs there and at a good hourly rate as well. So it's about all of council working together to help to recover, acknowledging that there are people who have lost their jobs. And, the influence we can have is to do what we can to keep people employed in the construction area. And at the same time, it means we're increasing the assets for Aucklanders. So that's part of the recovery budget.
Oh, thank you very much. Sorry, I was still on mute. Let's just see if there are any more questions that have come in. Yes, there is one actually. Relates to the business of library fines. So, Councillor Al-Filipaina, maybe you'd like to pick this up. There is a proposal that's being consulted on to remove library fines. Is that correct? You maybe would like to talk to that and the rationale behind that idea?
Yeah, there is, and I mean, I invite our community who's on this online webinar to have a look at page 47 of our consultation document, but also in the supplementary information. I think it's 7.12 to have a look at it, because what we've found and with supplementary is that we've got over 32,000 people who, as a result of having fines attributed to their names, don't actually end up going back to the library as a result. And so I would love to hear from our community and just to give some feedback around whether they support that or not, because obviously we will end up sort of having to debate that particular issue. But that's one of the key things that we've had that came through our committee. So look, that's one of the key things. So yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Somebody has asked, they don't understand why we need to raise rates and have electric buses. Electric buses are more expensive. Why do we need them in the first place? So is someone keen to have a go at that question?
Kia ora, Greg. Alex
yes, here we go.
here.
Alex T. Alec, would you just like to introduce yourself, please?
Kia ora, everybody. So Alex Tang, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Auckland Council. So great question, Samara. And there's two bits that I'd like to respond there. One, just generally speaking, and Pramod talked to this, climate change is one of those issues that is still live. You know, we have had COVID, we are still recovering from COVID, as we've heard, but climate change hasn't gone away because of COVID-19. We are still seeing the impacts of emissions in our atmosphere. We are seeing impacts such as greater storms, droughts, all those kinds of issues. So we can't not address that issue. And that's been a core part of the budget. That's part of that $150 million worth of investment specifically around climate change. So that's one thing. The second bit around the electric buses, one thing to remember is, yes, the upfront investment cost at the moment is somewhat higher than a diesel bus, but actually in the long run, those running costs are less. Electricity is actually a huge amount more efficient than diesel, and the cost of electricity is significantly less, and so on. So actually in the long run, EV buses work out cheaper. The other thing to remember that through this action, we're actually delivering a whole range of other benefits. So one of the reasons why electric buses are so important is that actually the health impacts of diesel buses are quite significant. A couple of years ago, Auckland Transport released their low emissions bus roadmap. And what they found is that about 81% of all vehicle related air pollution comes from diesel vehicles like electric buses. And that was about $466 million annually of health impact associated with diesel vehicles. So whilst obviously from a climate change perspective, these electric vehicles are fantastic in terms of reducing our emissions, and there's a whole range of other benefits that you'll see in this proposal and some of the other climate related proposals, such as increased urban ngahere, urban street trees, such as increasing investment in our community recycling centres. So it's important to remember those other benefits of taking action on climate change.
Yeah, thanks, Alec. And there's also quite a piece of advocacy to central government, isn't there, around this climate action?
Yeah, and that's a really good point as well, Greg. So hopefully those listening will know about Te Tara Ki Tawhi, Auckland's climate plan. If you haven't, it's online at climateakl.co.nz. Sets out the plan for the region to halve our emissions by 2030, reach net zero by 2050. And what that plan recognises is that Auckland Council has a big role to play, a really important role to play, but we will not achieve those targets if we don't have others on board, business being one, community groups, obviously, mana whenua, mātāwaka, and government, central government. And so for things like transport, where Auckland Council only has part of the investment, the New Zealand Transport Agency, Waka Kotahi, Ministry of Transport, actually provide a bulk of that funding, which Councillor Filipaina talked about in terms of the Auckland Transport Alignment Project and the Regional Land Transport Plan. This really sets that bar to say, look, we're willing to do some stuff, but actually government, you've got to come in and help us fund some of these activities as well. And part of that diesel bus program is about central government coming to the party as well to help us meet those goals of having a zero emissions fleet.
Alec, I think it could be helpful if you give our questioners some idea of the costs associated. I mean, I totally support moving to electric buses, but to reinforce your view that we can't do it alone, what is the cost of the fleet replacement, or even just part of the fleet replacement? And then perhaps one of the other officers can talk about what a 1% rate increase equates to. I think from memory it's between 17 and 18 million dollars. Somebody could confirm that for me. So in a way, my point is, and maybe Alec, you can help me with this, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of the challenge that we've got ahead of us. Can you give us an idea on what the costs will be as we move to electric buses?
Alec, you're on mute. Just unmute yourself. Thank you very much.
Sorry, apologies. Great comments, Councillor Fletcher. And some of the figures that we have around remembering that the zero emissions bus program is just one small part of the $150 million. The electric bus, we're looking at about 16 million up to 2030, additional to those normal running costs of the bus fleet. And that will be supplemented by, some of you will know that the central government have committed to providing additional funding to local agencies to increase their share of zero emissions buses, be that electric, be that hydrogen. So as you noted, it's not all of that 150 million. And as you said, Pramod, you
Sorry, Alec, I
think
missed you.
Alex just had a little freeze there. Oh, we just might have to we might have to move on and then come back and Alec can finish his statement later. Pramod, is there anything that you want to add to what Alec was talking about?
No, nothing from me, but just confirming that the 17 to 18 million that Councillor Fletcher mentioned in terms of 1% rates increase is correct. But yeah, I might just leave it for Alec once he gets back.
That's all right. Well, when he comes back, we'll catch up with him. Very good. Somebody did put in the comment about on that topic of the library fines. They just feel that they'd like not to pay fines, but that they feel that fines help the collection keep ticking over. So that's the sort of thing that perhaps we could hook the person up, and you can put in a question about that and get some stats back. Libraries, I think, we've probably got some evidence to show that library fines don't really keep the collection turning over, that it just turns over anyway without the fines having to do that, given the size of the collection. So we can come back to that. And of course, the library would still collect replacement fees for items that weren't returned, probably. So, gosh, trying to remember back to when I was a librarian. Very good. Alec, are you back with us? No. Alrighty. Any plan to increase plant nurseries in the South region? Who would like to have a go at answering that question? Does anybody know whether there's a plan to increase plant nurseries?
I think you'll find that we are going to have to invest in some partnerships that will enable us to have the capacity of the plantings. Councillor Dalton and others have all been involved with major volunteer programs, and I see Council's role as a facilitator in terms of a lot of these programs. There's a lot to running volunteer programs, from health and safety issues to the coordination and the provision of appropriate eco-sourced seedlings. So there is a very big job ahead there, but I think it's one that we can get community partnership funding and volunteerism generating. So if we are to act on those lofty goals that Alec has been talking about in the climate change area, plantings are going to be a significant part of it, and council must play a role with that.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Filipaino, is there anything that you'd like to add? Or perhaps Councillor Dalton, you would like to? Here we are, I've set you both off at once, so whoever gets in first gets the talking stick.
I was just reflecting on being at the Manurewa Local Board Have Your Say last week, and there were groups there like Totara Park, Friends of the Garden, and we must get, I think there's one thing, if there's one thing that we might have lost, is some of the volunteer community groups from the legacy councils that are still out there doing their mahi, and if we can get more through either through the targeted rates or through the local board budgets to help sustain them, so they can even broaden their work anymore, because there are a lot of volunteers out there that are just asking for support to get to get their things done. And it is planting in their local areas, or it is planting as part of a wider initiative. So again, I mean, I'm a supporter of localism, right? I want things devolved to the lowest possible place. And that's where we see the magic happen. And it's identifying all of the groups, and the local boards will help. I mean, we all know our own individual areas well, but our vehicle, because we've focused on regional, is really through our boards. So, yep, support all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina, nothing to add?
No, the ladies have said everything, so I'm fine. Thank you.
All right then. Well,
And Greg, can I just chip in and say that in Angela's area, they have been very successful. And it's not just in the urban parts, but the riparian plantings. If we're serious about cleaning up the Manukau Harbour, we need that riparian plantings along in our rural areas. So there's a very big challenge ahead of us, but it's one of the battles that I think we can win. But it's going to take an army of volunteers to make that happen. We can't just do it by increasing rates. We have to do it working with the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Filipaina, you quoted the figure of over 30,000 people who are discouraged from using libraries. Would there be an amnesty of some sort to encourage some of those people to come back and use libraries again, do you think?
It's a great idea, and this is why it's important that the submissions come through. We had a workshop that gave our committee members an idea as to possible options. This is why it's important that it goes out to our community for them to come back and say, you know what, PACE committee, we think you should have an amnesty. So look, we will take that on board. But no, I love that idea, because they are right, 32, all over 32,000. That is a lot of people who then, and the impact is the children. But that's why I'm just looking forward to thousands and thousands of submissions on libraries. Yep. And giving suggestion that amnesty is a good idea. Kia ora.
Yep. And just to keep emphasising that people can answer the questions that are in the consultation documents, but they may share ideas of their own as well. They are not constrained just to answering the questions. That's right,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Very good. All righty. I'm going to maybe Pramod, you'd be happy to pick this up, although it can go to somebody else if you don't want to. Is council still thinking of having some user pays refuse in the south? If so, there are a lot of increasing prices for the south, which may be hard for some families to pay. What are the timeframes for that refuse switch, and how refuse costs are paid for?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I was just wondering if Andrew was actually online. He might be in a better spot than me to respond to that one.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if he's online or not, or whether he is able to respond to that.
All righty, Andrew. Oh, there he is.
I'll start by commenting on there was some earlier question about nurseries. It's not quite about nurseries, but I would note that of the money we're going to raise with the electricity network resilience targeted rate to enhance our management of trees around the power network, we are going to use some of that money for additional tree planting, about $500,000. And some of the money we collect from Vector will allow us to free up some of our own resources presently spent on that. It'll give us another $500,000 for tree planting. So there's a small contribution in that space, but it's helping increase our investments in that area. The refuse rate is something the council's planning for around the 2023 year, I think. That would come into the South Auckland area, yes. Clearly, this is an issue that some people have concerns with, and while it's not one of the questions in the current budget, if it's something you've got an issue with, put that in your feedback to us so the councillors can think about it.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Alec, you're back online. Is there anything that you just want to finish off off from what you were saying previously? And also, is there anything that you would want to add about plant nurseries in South?
Yeah, no, so apologies about that. Apologies, everybody. I don't know if the question about funding of electric buses came through, but if the audience want more details, then we can come back with specifics around costs. But effectively, that electric bus program is a very small component of the overarching climate package, which is an even smaller component of the overall budget. On the nurseries, I did hear a few of the comments from Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Dalton about partnerships, and this is where I think it's really important to have your say, because that's something that we're hearing already through some of the comments and some of the webinars about how do we better leverage existing nurseries, community partnerships, and so on, and also private sector partnerships. I think I heard a little bit about that. You know, this is a regional plan, so we know that corporates get involved in planting trees as part of their corporate responsibility. So how do we leverage that? How do we use that a lot more to build on the impact? The important thing to note is that what we have in that 150 million is a small way to meeting those climate commitments. So the more that we can do either on the tree planting to capture more carbon and to deliver a whole range of ecosystem health, climate resilience benefits, the more we'll be able to respond to these huge targets which I heard Councillor Fletcher talk about, because that 150 million isn't going to get us to the targets that we need to achieve.
Thank you very much. I think we're coming up to probably our last question, and then we'll go into some wrap-up comments. So Anna, would you like to take this question, please? So this question is, we have some Kiwi build houses coming here, but they are not enough for the need, and we need more houses and lower rents. Is there anything that you would be able to say in response to that? It's perhaps more of a comment than a question, but and maybe you've got something to say.
Sure, thanks, Greg. I guess it's more around the clarification that Auckland Council don't build houses, but we certainly are consenting a huge number at the moment. We're reaching new records, and we actually consented 17,000 new dwellings in the year to January, which is huge. I think we're seeing a change in the dwellings we're consenting as well. They're closer to our public transport routes, a number of them, and they're also changing in the typology, which means we're seeing more attached dwellings, more apartments, getting that sort of higher density, which supports public transport as well. So we are seeing an increase in the number of consents being issued for dwellings. We will see more dwellings, and I'm sure a number of people are seeing changes in the areas with new dwellings being built. That comes with its challenges, and particularly around the cost of infrastructure. And with this being a recovery budget, that's one of the challenges that we've been working through with our councillors and with staff, looking at how we fund some of that infrastructure, and just touching on that importance of partnerships. And that's where the importance of working with the Crown and aligning where their investment is really important, so that we ensure we're building houses where there's going to be public transport services provided, and there's the other infrastructure around, so that we're building quality sort of communities, not just housing. But again, saying Auckland Council don't build houses, but we do consent, and we're consenting a significant number right across the region, not just in the south, but right across the northwest and central too.
Sure, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to make a comment at all? Just on that? No. Alrighty. Well, it's time now to go into just a final wrap up from our panelists. So really just anything you would particularly want to emphasize. And so let's see, who will we start with? Let's start with Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Greg. Look, it's a huge amount of information for anybody to try and digest. But I think if we could just hear about what is important to each person in their particular area, and the wider region, if they have thoughts around that and around the direction that they believe council should be taking or could do better at. So there are some specific questions. All councillors are available on email or phone if you want more specific discussion. But more than anything, I can assure you that we read the information that comes back. It's really important to us. and then that helps us to inform our decisions. And if anyone has watched council meetings, they will see that happen. They will see the debates between councillors representing different parts of Auckland. They'll see debates happen until we reach either a compromise or a common ground. So please don't think it's a waste of time. Do submit on this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Andrew's just let me know, for those people who are writing everything down really carefully, for refuse pay as you throw, it's 2024, not 2023, as he said, so 2024. Okay, update from Andrew there. And Councillor Fletcher, a couple of words from you, please, just as...
My pleasure. I'm certainly not going into this with predetermination. I'm going into this with an open mind. And like Councillor Dalton, I want to read all of the material that comes my way. I might be elected from one ward, but I want to believe that all of us are going to be looking at what is regionally best as we come to consider it. The question remains for me, given the scale of Auckland now and the balance sheet we have, are we using it as effectively as we might? We certainly haven't thrown all the options into this budget. We haven't thrown the future of the port or the airport shares or anything else. But what we do know is that we have an enormous challenge ahead of us. So we need to hear from each individual and all the communities. And I really hope that while it's onerous, this really counts. And I hope that people, sometimes they see local government as less important than central government, but this is where the rubber hits the road. So I hope that people can feel inspired to get their views put forward and submit on this budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Apolo Rees, would you like to just give a little wrapping up on behalf of your perspective as a local board member? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this tonight. And I guess the issues that have been discussed tonight do have regional spread, but just a little encouragement to also look into your local board area and what their plans are for your local board area. For our local board area, we have two particular items that we would definitely like feedback on, and that's Papatoe facilities gaps analysis, a community facility, and also at Manukau Sports Bowl, what could we put there? So these are big long-term questions that would love to have input in. So just an encouragement to not only look at the regional issues and very important issues, but there are also local board priorities that you should also have a look at as well. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And if you look online, or if you go to a library or service centre and look in this book, you will be able to see local board details as well, so you can have a look at those. So, very good, thank you very much. To Councillor Filipaina now, wrap up from you, sir.
Thank you, Greg. Look, I just wanted to acknowledge everybody, our staff, yourself, obviously, Greg. Thank you, because there's been some of the webinars that I've attended, you've emceed it, and so to all our staff, to our councillors, the colleagues that I sit around the table with, and also our local board, who the local board representatives who are crucial with us. And look, my only comment is going to be to Anonymous around the refuse. Please contact me, because that particular issue went through the Environmental and Community Committee when Penny Hulse was chair and myself as deputy chair. There are some reasons why we're at that stage where it gets implemented in 2024. So look, please, Anonymous, my email's on there. Just get back to me, and at least we can have a cordial about the reasoning. But yeah, thank you, everybody. To everybody, to you, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My colleagues, you mustn't have the last word over the councillors, but is there anything that you just want to add in that you think that you should just emphasise? So, Andrew, Pramod, Alec, Anna, anything from anybody?
Kia ora, Greg. I just wanted to, I didn't respond about the question around housing affordability.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to note that our planning committee's been doing a lot of work around, and staff have been reporting to our elected members around housing affordability. As an output of some of that work, it's again, the role that Auckland Council take in it, and it's a bit of an advocacy role to central government, because some of the issues need to be dealt with at a national level and not done purely by Auckland Council. But it's certainly an area that is top of mind for us, and that we are doing work on and doing advocacy to central government on. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Thank you very much. An important point. Very good. Well, thank you everybody for being here this evening, and thank you to those people who sent questions in. Just a reminder that the video of the session is going to be put on the website along with the questions and answers. If we did skip over a question and we missed one somehow, or we didn't get it quite right, that will be looked at by subject matter experts, and the answers will go up on the website as well. And so please, you can have a look at this webinar online, and you can look at others too, and just have a look and see as to how the discussion went. And remember to give your feedback. So go to https://haveyoursay.aucklandcouncil.govt.nz and encourage your whānau and friends to take part also. So earlier, Andrew said to me, oh, Greg, would you like to talk about the means of consultation? And in fact, he did it extremely well. So there are many ways to give feedback, just to run through them again: written and online feedback, face-to-face sessions, social media, the webinars like this. There are the translations that Andrew took us through. And if you are having trouble putting in your feedback, just phone the council for some advice on the best way for you. That's the offer to you. 093010101. And we are really keen to get feedback in whichever format you need to put it in. And you can visit a library or council service centre to see printed information, such as the book I'm waving around here. And note that your feedback on the 10-year recovery budget must be received by 12 noon on the 22nd of March. 12 noon on the 22nd of March. And all these councillors online are going to be sitting there at 1 minute past 12 going through the feedback. Perhaps that's not quite true, but there's going to be a lot to go through. So I think the return rates so far are looking pretty healthy, and the councillors this evening have really urged you to put in your feedback. Please take the opportunity to do so. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you very much indeed. Stay safe. Mauri ora.